The story begins with how the world's first panoramic virtual game came to be. Thanks to this, the game became popular all over the world at once. Complete freedom of action and great gameplay allows players to enter a different universe. Gamers are engaged in a fierce battle against demons with the help of the goddess. Plus, most players found their love here. Well, in this universe, you can't attack witches alone, because no one has ever been able to defeat them. The strongest among the witches is the Witch of Wishes. Her name is Lithia. A boy named Chensi Jishing finally caught someone. As it turned out, he caught the very witch casting. She asked that our hero simply destroy her. But the boy felt sorry for her. Lithia asked what he would do with her. The one replied that he was simply lusting for her body, that's why he told her to marry him. She couldn't believe that this was the very reason he had chosen to strike her down and imprison her in a dungeon. Chensi Jijin said that there was nothing wrong with it, especially since there was nothing edgy about his courtship. Lithia said she would never marry a man of an inferior race. In that case, our hero told the girl not to blame his future. She asked what our hero was doing and for him to let her go. Chensi Jishing replied that this love potion was specially made for her. He made her drink it so she wouldn't waste his efforts. It was too much for her, she couldn't drink anymore. Our hero was surprised to find that the girl's love had become only one more. She asked if he dared compare her to a goddess. Chensi Jishing had prepared in advance, for he still had 99 more vials. The system showed the witch's attitude, plus she couldn't drink anymore. Despite this, our hero made her drink another vial. After that, Lithia's attitude became maximally adoring. She hugged Chensi Jishing very tightly, but he said that he didn't have any more left. Since the game forbids gamers from proposing to witches, he gave her a ring and told her to ask him to be her husband. After this request, Chensi Jishing immediately replied that he agreed. The system congratulated the guy on being officially married. From that point on, their lives, abilities and attributes would be separated. Since this was the first such marriage in the game, Jeans thought he was now the boss. After looking at his maximum level, he decided to move on to the next plan. This plan was to capture all the witches. Suddenly, his wife asked why Chensi Jishing needed other witches if he had her. Our hero captured all the witches, 8 girls at once. The system showed all the people that Chensi Jishing was the best in existence. After capturing the witches, he didn't even know then there would be a renewal after which he could get a new wife. Suddenly our hero looked at the witch's chest and wanted to touch it. But a warning popped up in front of him that he couldn't go below the neck of an NPC. Now he definitely didn't have anything to do, because everyone had seen him, and the demons had surrendered, and so all was calm in the world. Taking off his VR goggles, Chensi Jishing returned to his world and began to fall asleep. When our hero went to sleep, some system detected him saying he had completely absorbed the witch's powers. Some girl was immediately willing to call. She asked that the system use up all of its power and maintain mating contact, even though she would die. Waking up, Chensi Jishing felt dizzy. He decided to touch his pillow with Lithia and didn't understand why it was so soft. Suddenly she asked where our hero was sticking his hands. Chensi Jishing was horrified and said that his wife looked too intimidating. But the girl in response only got angry at how a man of a lower race could call her wifey. She added that she would tear our hero to pieces. Chensi Jishing began to flee and ask for help, because the premeditated destruction of her spouse was imminent. The witch used her magic to destroy our hero. She didn't understand how this man could have gotten into her bedroom. Looks like we'll have to punish the guards properly. Suddenly, Lithia saw Chensi Jishing staying alive and didn't understand how this was possible. Her body was too hot. It's a symbol of the marriage contract. The girl didn't realize what our hero had done to her. Chenxi Zhixing replied that she herself knows everything perfectly well, but Lisha asked to stay away from her. Our hero assumed that the girl was going through a Bulgarian phase. Afterward he said that naughty children should be spanked. But Chenxi Zhixing didn't understand why the system was allowing him to touch the NPC's body. He thought it was still a bug, so he would contact support tomorrow. After that he wanted to quit the game. Chenxi Zhixing habitually wanted to take off his VR glasses but didn't realize where they had gone. It was strange to him why he was still in the game. But suddenly he remembered that he had taken off his VR glasses before going to bed. At one point he realized that he was completely immersed in the game. Sitting in the room, they heard the doorknob start to move. Suddenly, Lithia's personal maid burst in on them and asked if the girl was alright. She was shocked when she saw our hero giving her a massage. Lithia added that everything was fine. She reminded herself that she didn't allow the maid to enter without her permission. Dinny said she heard screams, so she was concerned that something scary might have happened. But our hero added that everyone is screaming while enjoying the massage. The girl didn't realize what was going on, but it felt really good. After that, our hero added that the conclusion would be a breast massage. Upon hearing these words, the subordinate immediately left, saying that she hadn't finished her laundry. Chenxi Zhixing asked if he liked Lithia's massage technique. In response, the witch began to freak out and attack our hero. He didn't care, as her attacks had no effect on him. He reminded her that she could summon a slime and destroy it. Lithia didn't understand why she couldn't do harm with that kind of power. Besides, the ring on her hand is the foundation of a marriage. The girl thought that our hero was the groom whom Mother Goddess had chosen. Chenxi Zhixing said that it is correct, he is the groom her mother chose. The guy realized that his wife was making a big deal out of it. Our hero began to tell us that after the battle between Ibrahim's evil spirits, both sides suffered greatly. After the battle was over, everyone fell into an eternal sleep. But before he went to sleep, the evil spirits managed to wed him to all the available witches. They allowed him to choose his next successor among the witches. Lithia understood, but she recently turned 1,000 years old, so there's nothing special about this marriage. The girl said he made a good choice in turning his attention to her. Chenxi Zhixing said that she is just the first witch who received the notice, now he is going to tell others as well. The girl stopped him saying that you can't force a messenger to walk. Lithia wanted to inform the other witches herself, after which bring them here to give their opinions. The girl told our hero to wait for her here, for she would make quick work of it. Before the witch even notices, the theocracy of the Mother Goddess will be hers. When Lithia went into the portal, our hero realized she had fallen for it. He was surprised to find himself on that witch's bed. But Her Majesty is very difficult to deceive, everything worked out well thanks to maternal deprivation. The guy didn't realize who said it, but it turned out to be a system that would shut down in 5 minutes. Chenxi Zhixing started asking where he is and how he can go back. The guy got to another world and has to defeat all the witches. In this case, he needs to take Lithia as his wife, then defeat the other witches. The system has brought his storage chest into this game, he will not perish thanks to good equipment. Suddenly in this chest, our hero saw Lithia's wedding ring. He remembered that he'd turned the favor of over a dozen goddesses into a warm ambiguity. Luckily, he didn't seem to score affairs with all the goddesses. For otherwise a bloody war will break out. Our hero's life is in jeopardy. Once he's out on the streets, you'll need to hurry up and level up. At this time on the second floor of the palace, Lithia met with the elf queen Sylvia. She told Lithia not to call her that again because of one person. As it turns out it was our hero, and the girl doesn't want to hear his name again. Lithia said she had errands for her. She asked to find all available information of the owner of that hair. Sylvia began to recognize that this hair belonged to a man 19 years old. This person has no demonic and divine energy, he is not even capable of overpowering a slime. At that moment, Lithia realized that our hero had lied to her. Sylvia added that the aura of many witches hovered around this man. Lithia didn't understand why Mother had chosen a human as her messenger. She summoned the bad eye and ordered it to destroy Chenxi Jixing. If he is indeed a messenger of the Mother Goddess, the tiny guardian will do no harm. The system told the guy that there's no level limit on the engagement ring. This news immediately cheered him up, he asked to be called Lord of the Rings. After a few seconds he realized that this wedding ring was useless, but the system said it was better than nothing. Since 5 minutes have already passed, the system has shut down and now the world depends only on our hero. While Chenxi Jixing resented this news, an evil eye appeared behind him. He saw a man of an inferior race and thought how dare he sit in Mrs. Lithia's room. He was about to destroy our hero, for he had given his heart to Her Highness. I once said he knew the system was here. But the word system and the name of the evil eye sound the same, so the one thought that our hero noticed him. Chenxi Jixing said, so that the system does not hide and come out. The evil eye realized there was no point in hiding anymore. The evil eye decided to get to know our hero better and show his true abilities. The guy didn't understand where this demon king had come from, after all, he was guarding Lithia's doors. This monster was already enraged and started attacking Chenxi Jixing. Suddenly our hero assumed a marvelous pose and was able to dodge the blow. The evil eye saw the guy sit down and realized he didn't take him seriously. He also saw Chenxi Jixing throw away a lot of world-class attributes. The evil eye thought our hero had taken advantage of someone's respect or attention. He suggests that to defeat our hero he won't even have a few lives to live. Afterwards, the evil eye apologized saying that his attack was ridiculous. After all that, the evil eye ran away. Chenxi Jixing thought that he was very lucky. Later that night, Lithia walked over to the bed where our hero slept and watched him. She wanted to touch him, but he immediately grabbed her hand. Chenxi Jixing said, if a girl craves his body, then let her just say so. Once they become one, she will gain the power of the golden majority and become a true goddess. Lithia replied that what she really wanted was the theocracy of the Mother Goddess. Lisha was very cute and she had a shy expression on her face, so it was hard for Chenxi Jixing to keep herself under control. Our hero took her by the leg, but the girl didn't realize what he was doing. Chenxi Jixing showed the marriage union ring. Lisha will inherit all the power of the Mother Goddess after they get married. He said he fell in love with Lithia at first sight. But the girl replied that they didn't really know each other, so they needed to get to know each other better. In response, Chenxi Jixing said that they should have gotten closer right now, and do it as deeply as possible. The girl agreed and it worked out beautifully for them. There's not much left for the contract to be fixed. Suddenly Dani's maid flew into the room. She started to cover her eyes saying she didn't see anything. Lithia asked with an angry look what Dani was forgetting in her room. She replied that she had come here to make a milk bath. After which Lithia began to explain that she is not in any relationship with our heroes. Chenxi Jixing added that this is called a warm bed. Since it's cold today, we need to warm the witch's body while she sleeps. Lithia agreed with these words and said she would not need a milk bath today. Dani stormed out of the room saying she understood. After that, Lithia decided to seal the door so no one else would break in. Our hero was ready to continue, but the girl did not promise anything. She proposed to start with a simple sweetheart relationship. The girl turned around and saw our hero wrapped a rope around himself. She didn't realize what he was doing. Chenxi Jixing said that his wife is worthy of being called the strongest witch and he can't lag behind. But Lithia replied that it wasn't what he thought it was. Chensi Jixing should know that the cow plan makes magic milk. Thanks to him, you can even change race and become a panda. Also thanks to this milk, one can change from men to women and back again. After these words, our hero was roused. Lithia asked what he was getting himself into. The guy replied that he was jealous of her and asked what on earth she was doing with Dinny's breast milk. But the girl replied that it was only an additive if she did not tell the secret, for a war would break out between the witches. Chensi Jixing thought, if the effect is that strong, we can start with Danny. After all this, our hero suggested we go to bed. Lithia asked if he really wanted to sleep in her room. Chensi Jixing replied that Mother Goddess's messenger should keep an eye on everything, therefore, she should be patient for 24 hours, for the sake of the theocracy. Hearing these words, with an excited face, the girl agreed. At night the boys both lay with their backs to each other, not making any sounds. Our hero has decided that he's not just going to sleep, he needs to take Lithia tonight. Suddenly the girl addressed our hero by name. The one was puzzled how she knew it. He asked if she knew his name. But Lisha asked if our hero knew this guy. Chensi Jixing thought she didn't understand anything after all. The girl added that this man had caused a lot of trouble to the goddesses and trampled their feelings. Lithia believed he was the messenger of the Mother Goddess. Ever since Mother Goddess fell asleep, the world has changed a lot. Yes, and Chensi Jixing appeared when the divine apostles became too many. It seems that the divine apostles were called by the goddess from the earth. They were weak and small, but sinister and insidious, plus they could be resurrected as much as you wanted. They died a great many times, but still everything happened again. Chensi Jixing asked what happened then. Are they still fighting? Lithia replied that they simply disappeared, after which all the witches lost their memories. The memories didn't seem to have survived, but they didn't say anything other than the name Chensi Jixing. The guy was shocked. Was what he was doing in the game really happening? Looking at his wanted ad, he saw an epic outfit he'd worked hard on, luckily no face to be seen. Chensi Jixing asked if this man had amused himself and abandoned all the goddesses. Lithia replied that he was right. Besides, the reward for Lithia is only half of his, but that's not the point. A little later, Danny came to the Moon Witch's room and told her about the messenger. She added that one could inherit the power of the Mother Goddess if one married a messenger. After a while, this news reached the Witch of Destiny as well. These rumors spread like wildfire among the witches. The Witch of Honor said she would go to Lithia and leave the castle to her subordinate. All the witches decided to gather, fighting for divine power, but our hero at this time was sleeping a sound sleep. The witches decided that the fight for Wu Cheng's Holy Grail would soon begin. Lithia woke up first thing in the morning and took a hot bath. It was the best decision. Sylvia confirmed her words by saying it was the ultimate pleasure. Except that on such an incredibly pleasant morning, some worm had snuck in. Sylvia recalled that Lithia had said there would be no men in town. Letitia replied that it was too complicated. In fact, her magic was useless against him. Our hero said that Sylvia seems to have been cheated by a man once, so he will help them teach him a lesson. Sylvia replied that our hero talks too much. She added that Chensi Jixing's voice seemed familiar to her. Since this girl's voice was also familiar to our hero, he decided to open her game panel through the system. He saw that it was an elf goddess who had fallen to the level of a demoness because of him. Sylvia asked if they had met somewhere before, but Chensi Jixing replied that he had just arrived here yesterday. Suddenly Lithia called Sylvia to her and our hero thought he was already saved. Thanks to the fact that Chensi Jixing rarely showed his face in the game, he was now alive. Lithia said that Sylvia's last test showed our hero to be a simple man, but the witch doesn't think so. She brought the guy with her today so Sylvia could check on him again. Our hero watched and understood nothing of what they were whispering about among themselves. He even felt uncomfortable that they were secretly discussing something. Suddenly, huge green plants started coming out of the water. It was a vicious curly Orleans. The guy started to run away, not realizing how it got under his ass. He asked that this plant not pull the towel off him, and let him stay away from it. Chensi Jishing turned around and saw that the plant had suddenly stopped. The witches were surprised, for Sylvia had given no such order. This plant immediately began to girdle Sylvia. She was puzzled as to why the plants she had summoned had suddenly started attacking her. Our hero realized that because of the calling of this liana, his ring immediately deemed Sylvia an enemy. Chensi Jishing was lucky that the ring didn't come off, otherwise he would have been hanging in the air by now. The guy said if Sylvia dared to attack him, she would have to suffer punishment. After that, the vines began tickling Sylvia in all sorts of places. The girl started saying that she had lost and begged for mercy. It couldn't go on like this for her, and she asked Lithia for help. She replied that the plant was too disgusting and she couldn't help. She said, if our hero is indeed a messenger of the mother goddess, then let him be more restrained. After which, Lithia activated the divine scattering beam. It seemed to our hero that Lithia was jealous of him. Sylvia said he took control of her liana, something no ordinary person could do. And even if he's not a human male, he's still a pervert. He didn't like those words and wondered if Sylvia wanted to test his real strength. The girl was about to pounce on our hero, but Lithia stopped her in time. In an instant, behind the curtains stood Sylvia's subordinate who had arrived in accordance with her orders. According to his investigation, on the second floor of the state palace, there are slave traders. Sylvia apologized to Lithia, but the latter said it wasn't her fault. After all, the witch of slavery still dared to come even though slavery had been abolished. This news greatly upset the witch Lithia. She motioned for Sylvia to come with her to the second floor. But Chensi Jishing has to go with them. The guy asked why they need him. Lithia replied that he would investigate for her. He could also watch the queen destroy small bugs. Lithia has decided to show what will happen to those who dare make trouble on her territory. There are many towns and villages hidden in the 6-story palace. It's like little countries. Every floor of this palace is ruled by a demon, for the palace is an impregnable fortress. Under the absolute control of Lithia, the demon of each floor manages the territories, therefore, countries at each level are successfully prospering. Well, even after Lithia abolished slavery, human trafficking still goes on. Our heroes have arrived in one of the cities on the second floor. Chensi Jishing asked why Sylvia kept staring at him. Lithia told him to ignore it, because Sylvia hates men, that's why she acts like that with everyone. While our hero had no ability to defend himself, he grabbed Lithia. Looking at it from the outside, Sylvia said that our hero is a chatterbox, and there's really no use for men. But our hero had the look of cheating Lithia. It seemed something familiar to Sylvia. Since he had already pissed her off, the girl walked over and asked that our hero move away from Lithia. The witch asked that Sylvia not call her by name, for she must not be discovered. A little later, the salesman greeted everyone who came to see him today. He said that thanks to the goddess of slavery, they had enough goods today. The first lot is redneck slaves and the price for them is 5 coins. Their faces were very excited, for people wanted to buy them up. The little girl clung to her mother, and she said there was no need to be afraid, for the goddess would save them. Suddenly some man poured gold coins, seeing that there was a lot of merchandise today. That man was the mechanical duke. He said he would take everything he had today. Everyone was very surprised to see him, because he's the one who single-handedly took the whole city. The salesman said he would pack everyone up for him right away, but he wondered why so many. As it turns out, today is the anniversary of when this duke took over the entire city, so he wants to do a hunt. He said he would put these men in the hunting grounds and let them escape, after that he and the other dukes would hunt them down. Since he bought many at a time, he asked to inspect them, for if there was poor quality, the other dukes would be upset. The little girl began to pray that the great goddess would save them. Meanwhile, the boys came to a place where clandestine slave operations were being conducted. One of the merchants offered our hero to buy a batch of human girls, but he just ignored it. Slave trading is already a whole industry. Chensi Zhixing doesn't even know how many of these dens he and his friends have missed in this game. He wondered if nothing had changed since coming into this world. Suddenly, a salesman came out of the door saying that the mechanical Herzo chopped the girl without making a sound. Lithia saw the human slave and it seemed she was still breathing, so she asked that Sylvia heal her. The girl obeyed the order and used a high-level treatment. Our hero wondered why Lithia took pity on the man. After all, in the game she was the ultimate villain. Suddenly a little girl took hold of Lithia's cloak and begged for help. She asked that Lithia save her mom, dad, and the other villagers. But since Lithia was an evil witch, there would be a price to pay for making a deal with a demon. In response to these words, and the girl replied that she was willing to do anything. Since the contract is done, Lithia has asked that this case be left to her. The salesman told Herzog, if this continues, there will be quite a scandal, but Herzog is not afraid, as he is the strongest on this floor. Suddenly turned to him from behind asking how this little ant dared to make a mess here. Lithia said he was caught with booty, and asked if he was willing to pay the price. The Duke said a flock of curious mice had come here. He wanted to read their most basic data, but he was having no luck. All their data was inaccessible and he thought it was anti-exploration magic. Our hero looked at this Duke and realized that it would be very difficult to defeat him. The Duke warned them to stay out of it for their safety. After all, he's in a bad mood today. Since the quality of slaves here is poor, he will go elsewhere, so he gave the boys a chance to get out of here. Sylvia became very angry and asked how dare he speak to Her Majesty like that. Sylvia activated her plant skill and the Duke immediately flew out of the place. Lithia asked her they got so much courage that they dared to buy or sell slaves in her lands. Herzog saw the oppressive force and wondered if it was really Her Majesty Lithia. Big Green Vine put the last of the surviving slaves on the ground. The girl was still able to reunite with her parents, after which her mother immediately began thanking the goddess for it. Sylvia, hearing all this, said that this is a witch town and no goddess is here. She then told them not to thank her, they owed their lives to her mistress and they should thank her. According to her, Her Majesty's Lisha will accept their humble words of gratitude. As soon as the people saw the girl, they immediately began to shout with joy. The queen herself had come to their town. The girl turned to her subjects and said that she was here to get even with some criminals. Lithia said that the controlled territory was engaged in illegal slave sales and also dared to be rude to the queen. She asked Sylvia what she thought of it, and the girl replied that in her humble opinion, they were felonies. According to her, such people should be sentenced to death so that the rest of us don't get hurt. The merchant began to beg the queen for mercy. He asked that she teach the thoughts of his master that she was the witch of slavery. But the girl replied that his mistress never bothered about her reputation, and then she used the magic of taking life. The poor, little blue goblin was grabbed by a big purple hand, and though he begged to be pardoned, the girl wouldn't listen to him. Right in front of the metal Duke's eyes, all of this happened. When the body of the peddler fell, his soul began to flow out of all the holes in his face and thus he died. The girl said that it was basically an inferior demon. In her opinion it was unworthy to live, and now it was time to deal with the metal one. She said she wondered what the Duke's wish tasted like, in the form of a soul. When it got to the point that he was finished, he made an attempt to escape by trying to fly away from the scene. But the girl was in no way impressed by this, responding by using some sort of spell. And after a moment, the metallic duke was already imprisoned in some sort of purple sphere. Then he also began to beg for forgiveness. He said he was ready to give the girl anything, even 1,000,000 for his life. She said it was too small a sum, though she didn't care, for his death was of far greater value to her. At that moment, she squeezed her hand and the sphere also began to shrink and decrease in size. A moment later, mixed with the shrieking of metal armor, an explosion rang out and the duke was melted into ashes. When it was over, Lithia turned around and asked her husband how he liked the performance. But when she looked back, there was no one behind her, even though she'd said he'd been standing behind her a second ago. At that moment, the main character started to crawl out from under the rubble, resenting the fact that he was not told that there was going to be an explosion. Fortunately, he was lucky enough to have a jade ring, so such a trifle won't stop him. But fate had one more blow in store. A sack containing 1,000,000 gold coins was vaulted over his head. According to the system, it found a host that got all the loot from the boss and it started initializing those items. It did indeed turn out to be 1,000,000 platinum coins that are still in circulation throughout the mainland. The main character made the point that sometimes, too much luck gives you a headache. The action began to unfold in an ancient elven temple. Some knight, with flowers, was strenuously proposing to the goddess that she marry him. The goddess replied that her chosen must have incredible courage and if the man could prove the fortitude of his spirit, then she would marry him. Sylvia requested that the man bring her the doomsday silver, the cold iron of the river of infinity, and the rainbow dragon crystals, all in the amount of 10,000 pieces. The guy was shocked. He said even the greatest masters would take years to gather all these materials. Suddenly, the man in the main character's costume said that it didn't take that long to do all this, and the knight was probably just a wimp. Chenxi Jixing said that he had already gathered all these materials, so according to the goddess arrangement, she should marry him. Here the guy offers her already jade ring. She knocked on the ground with a staff, said the protagonist is a bad man. The girl shrieked and said that the forest jade was the greatest treasure of their race. She asked if the guy being a messenger wanted to marry a goddess. The guy replied that apparently he was madly in love with an unapproachable woman and maybe his feelings were already going over the edge, but he didn't care. He'll explain that he's been in love with her for a long time, and then he'll start dropping beautiful phrases about blue bottomless eyes and stuff like that. Hearing all this, the girl blushed. The system reported that her relationship status had gone to meaning, doubt. He kept pleading with the goddess, and saying that his feelings were incredibly genuine and he would cherish them until the day he died. From such beautiful words, even the man cried and cried out how he wished he had been born a girl. All this introduction, with a purely heartfelt acknowledgement, moved Sylvia to the status of a lover. The girl's counselor said that since this man is brave, even opponents of interracial marriage won't mind much. The girl finally lost her head and that day she believed his words. In the story, later on, Chenxi Jixing sneaked into the slave trader's lair and saved so many innocent people, making even more people support their marriage. Then, the girl made a ring that can only be created once in a lifetime from jade, and waited for the protagonist to offer it to her. In a secluded place, after a lot of time, a girl once asked a guy what his real name was, not a nickname. He replied that his name was Wu Cheng. The girl finally melted and found a man she could trust with her life. At least that was the case until their wedding day, at which point the groom simply ran away from the ceremony. People didn't understand how a living person could just disappear and succumb to the lily and the girl that they would find him. But there was something wrong with her. She just headed off in some direction without answering her subjects' questions. It turned out that the main character just left, taking the ring, and from that day the girl was consumed by hatred. Then something began to happen. From her began to believe violet energy, and she herself began to turn into a demon. Because of the hatred that consumed me, she changed her appearance and even her advisor realized that their goddess had fallen. Eventually, from these events, the girl lost her divine power and became a subordinate of Lithia, only to find and take revenge on Wu Chenu. Sylvia often recalls that moment, and henceforth blames herself for her feminine weakness, for being able to trust a man. Her main goal now is to help Her Majesty, that is Lithium, expose the protagonist using her information network. The girl walked into the witch's room, thinking along the way about how she would tear that man into 1,000 pieces. When Her Majesty saw the goddess, she was very happy and said that she had something she wanted to ask her. She wanted to ask the goddess to help Chenxi Zhixing, for he was still dizzy from the moment the bag of gold fell on him. Luckily Sylvia was smart, she quickly figured out the main character's acting and then said that if he didn't stop fooling around right now she would color goblins to kiss him. From such news, the protagonist suddenly felt very good and he immediately felt better. The guy's plan didn't work, and because of Sylvia, he didn't get to kiss Lithia like he originally wanted to. The girl got a little angry at the guy and told him not to do it again, and now she was going to the witches' tea party. It is such a gathering of all the witches to address a variety of issues and discuss the impact on the world. When the guy remembered this, he realized that this was just a great way to find out more information. Then he began to ask the girl to take him with her, because he also wanted to drink tea. Sylvia quickly shattered the protagonist's joyful mood and told him that he wouldn't get there so easily, and he started telling her that he was Mother's messenger. But that's an even bigger argument for Lithia not to take it with her, because if anyone finds out about its existence, the girl will have competition. Her Majesty then added that even when she marries him, there is no way she will give the protagonist to anyone. According to her, he is her property. The guy started telling me that he wanted them to have children very badly. Sylvia's mind is blown by this jerk's behavior. Every time she sees him she wants to rip his tongue out for some reason. But Lydia said she didn't have time to deal with the guy, because she was already late, and because of that, the Midnight Witch would give her some retarded nickname again. Because of this, the girl quickly informed Sylvia that this kid was on top of her while she was gone. Sylvia asked if Her Majesty didn't know how disgusted a girl was with any man, but Lithia stood her ground and said there was nothing wrong with that. The guy said he could take care of himself, but the girl was adamant. She said there was even a chance he might want to run away. The guy realized that if he was left alone with Sylvia, yours was over, and so he sprang into action. He started rubbing some heresy into the girl, that his feelings were eternal and he would never fall in love with any of the other witches. Then he said that he would protect their marriage and his feelings all his life, until his death, and Sylvia when she heard this, immediately understood everything. Because of this, the girl started having Vietnam flashbacks about that red night. She didn't believe it at first, but her senses didn't fail her. The person standing in front of her was most likely the same Wu Chen. When Lithia saw that the girl was crying, she asked what happened, and Sylvia said that she just remembered the culprit of all her troubles and called the name of the main character. Lithia said that she forbid the fallen goddess to think about this lesson, and now she was leaving the boy in her care. This time the girl didn't resist, she agreed to the request, realizing to herself that she needed to check the guy out properly. She was determined and said that this was a day the protagonist would never forget, if there was even the slightest possibility of a Wu Chen standing in front of her. A purple portal appeared in the air and Lithia said she understood Sylvia's dislike of men. But at the same time, she said, she is obliged to keep an eye on the main character, and the main task is to make sure that the guy does not leave the room. The girl then shouted to the guy to make sure the messenger of the gods didn't miss her without her, and she went into the portal. The guy tried to stop her, but he didn't have time to say anything. Eventually the guy realized that things were really bad for him. According to him, when he was alone with Sylvia, he always felt like his armor was about to fall off. Then the girl turned to Chenxi Zhixing and said that she was glad that they were finally alone, and she had a lot of questions. She said she'd love to be gentler, but she really likes torture questions, so there's nothing she can do about it. Why she said that she was very different from humans and would not tolerate a male dog like him, so if he decided to be amiable, she would feed him her whip. After that the questions came pouring in, she asked everything: gender, age, gender, and most importantly first and last name. Under the unexpected circumstances, the guy could only squeeze out that he was a laird. When he saw her reaction, he thought to himself that he had always noticed how Sylvia was very hard to fool. He realized that things were not going well for him, and then remembered that he had a special ring that allowed him to move to his partner. According to the guy, although he can't use the local skills, he has the attributes of each ring in his hands. The girl once again told the guy to think hard before answering her questions with nonsense. She then slapped the protagonist and said that until he felt the pain, he would not be able to answer honestly. But her punch flew nowhere. The guy had time to activate the skill and moved somewhere. When Sylvia realized that the protagonist had escaped, she was finally convinced that the guy had a lot of skeletons in his closet. But, a moment later, the girl felt you at her back. The voice of the system said that the move to the protagonist's partner was complete, and the guy appeared right above Sylvia's head. It seems like the system is really screwing with the protagonist. It all ended in a very awkward fall, in a very lucky spot. The guy realized how unlucky he was. A random teleportation teleported him to the same place. He immediately shrieked for the system to start teleporting him again, but in response he heard the skill recharge. Simplifying the protagonist, interrupted by Sylvia's hand that grabbed his face. The girl says it's time for her to really joke around, and the guy apparently doesn't realize he's about to die. After a certain, indescribable spectacle of sitting on a chair and saying that Lower didn't have a real name, Sylvia told Chensi Zhixing not to worry, because Lithia would not be back for a while yet, and she and the girl were apparently old acquaintances. She said who the main character was while saying both of his names. Upon hearing this, the guy starts making a fool of himself and tells her that she has him confused with someone else, but the name sounds cool, so it probably belongs to some handsome jock. Hearing this made the girl angry. She asked the guy if he really didn't recognize what she had just said. At that point, the girl replied that she hoped that the protagonist would still admit his mistake, but she was wrong about him once again. The guy does not have an ounce of conscience. After that, she finally decided to destroy the protagonist using the divine space magic technique. A moment passed, and the lad found himself already in another room that was overgrown with roots. He realized that this was divine space and no one but the goddess and that guy could come out here. The girl then launched an attack while saying that the only man who could enter this space was that Chensi Zhixing. She replied that now the guy would not get off, but the protagonist began to say that he had reasons for doing so. But she's not interested in hearing about the mental wounds of the protagonist. Forgotten. According to her, no reason is good enough to abandon her fiancé for 1,000 years. So she's intrigued to know what kind of heartache made him do it. The guy was able to repel the attack using the jade ring the king had bought, which the girl had once given him. The guy finally apologized. He said he understood how much damage he had done to the stronger, but said she did have mental wounds at the time. Then, he took off the ring and said that if his death could heal the same heart wounds in the girl, he was willing to die for it. But this time she doesn't believe him. She says it's just another one of the guy's lies. After saying those words, she immediately started attacking and said that she wouldn't back down because of his pity. Seeing all this picture, the guy cried, but the girl said that he will never understand all the suffering that she went through because of him. He then took a step forward towards his death while saying he would never forget the time they were together. The girl wasn't ready to back down and her blade pierced the protagonist's stomach. He walked over to the fallen goddess, hugged her, and told her to finally forgive him. Then he added that he loved her. Sylvia also cried. She said she didn't understand why he was telling her this again. Only when the main character's body fell to the ground did the girl realize that for 1,000 years she had fully expected the main character to die. It eventually turned out that she mistakenly blamed him for everything, and she had to destroy the guy to realize it. In the next frame, the girl has already used healing magic to prevent the protagonist from dying. When he woke up, the guy questioned why she was doing this, though deep down he realized he had made the right bet. He was already happy, because he thought the girl had forgiven him completely, but a second later he got a slap on the face. The girl asked why the main character hadn't dodged already. According to her, destroying him right now would be too easy. Her temper began to change like a cat, and after a second she said she wanted to praise the guy for acting very brave this time. According to her, that's why she will now give the main character the right to explain himself, but if the explanation does not satisfy her, the guy will die. The guy was surprised. He risked his life, but the girl still needs an explanation, so also the problem is the system didn't say what happens if the guy dies without completing the mission. He quickly realized that if Sylvia didn't like the explanation, he would immediately die, so he decided to use the ring buff. Chenxi Zhixing used the greatest skill in history, the ability to utter nonsense with a serious face. He said that whatever he said next would be directly related to the well-being of all mankind, and perhaps even the world. So he hopes that Sylvia won't tell anyone, but still, he left her because. Then he said that this was what the witch who created the world had told him to do. It was some sort of mission to get to the witches and figure out how to stop them. And since the guy was the head of his town, he was obligated to do this to stop them. The guy added that the fewer people who knew the truth the better. Besides, he'd already managed to rub his way into Lithia's confidence. He said he was completely to blame for the whole situation, but he had a higher assignment. When he finished it, the girl could do whatever she wanted to him, even tear him to pieces. But something confused her. Did the guy really want to marry Lithia? But the guy replied that his love for Sylvia is the strongest, and as soon as he completes the mission, they can escape to the end of the world and live for each other. Hearing all this unspeakable, unrealistic nonsense, the girl exhaled, then took a few steps forward. And then, as she got closer, she kissed the guy and said she was looking forward to the day. Their happy conversation was interrupted by a magical flash. It was an attack directed at Chenxi Zhixing. Lithia came back. She said she was very surprised that the guy's name was Wu Qin. Lithia called the protagonist a scumbag, and Sylvia was ready to destroy the witch at all costs. But suddenly, the girl put her hand on her shoulder and asked what the two of them were doing here. Lithia was surprised. In her opinion, the girl wanted to fight her for recognition of the mother goddess. Then, unharmed, the protagonist rose from the dust and said that he was only trying to help Sylvia get the fly out of her eye, because it's very dusty in here. And then he said that next time the girl didn't use the energy beam against him, because he was already tired of his clothes being torn all the time. Then the guy added that she was using her power in any way she could. After a second the whole trio froze in tense silence. And then Lithia said she thought so, and if the guy was just helping to get the fly out of his eye, then it was fine. Lithia then patted the goddess on the shoulder and said she had a cool plan. Sylvia could drag the guy into her divine space and no one would get him there. Sylvia replied that it was a very great honor for her, but still she would do the girl's bidding. Afterward, Lithia turned to the protagonist and told him that since he was going to not get married, he should socialize less with other women, even her subordinates. The girl then asked who Lithia was going to marry. It turned out to be a voice from the portal, and from there, the girl said she wasn't going to wait and would go inside right away. Some girls started to step into the spatial passage, but Lithia quickly made her change her mind and shoved her back in. She conditioned her actions on the fact that the room was very messy and she would now clean up in a few minutes and then Ta could go in. When the guy saw all this, the voice seemed very familiar to him. He quickly realized that it was a midnight witch named Xia Yueyun. Then, Lithia began to conjure some spell and said with which she opened another portal. After that she told the guy that he had already been in the palace for a very long time, and now he should take a walk together with Sylvia. She then turned to the goddess herself and told her to also dispatch the title character and take care of him. Lithia added that the two do not return to the palace until she gets the girl's orders. In the meantime, they can go anywhere the two of them want. The portal's exit appeared above some lifeless stone wasteland. The guy appeared in mid-air and vaulted down towards the direction of the huge purple beam, resenting the fact that you have to fall vertically downwards in these portals. He was already glad that at least he hadn't landed face down, but suddenly Sylvia appeared in the air. She landed on the most unfavorable and unfortunate place from which the protagonist almost lost consciousness. Sylvia was frightened and asked the guy if everything was okay. He said that it was basically okay to live. When they noticed countless rays from the sky, the girl explained that it was all the work of the Midnight Witches. Ever since the goddess who created the earth has been in eternal sleep again, witches have begun to take over the world, and they are so powerful that humans can't do anything against them. The guy was very surprised. He asked how things were with the lands that belonged to him. But according to the girl, even the main character's lands did not escape this fate, and in the end the city of Chensi also fell. She explained that all the people in the cities are now trapped in these beams, and for as long as they have been there for maybe thousands of years, they have no hope. The guy looked at it and realized that he really did have lands in the game, and there really were people living there, even though it had been thousands of years. He says his memories of those times are very vivid. He remembered everyone from the locals and the brave soldiers, ending with the scholars who fought hard against the aristocratic monopoly in his city. The girl asked the guy what happened to him, but he replied that everything was fine and he just happened to see a lot of things. The guy said whether they were under control or not, he'd have to win them back, and now they're Sylvia'd off to Chancy Town. Then the girl remarked that they couldn't enter the beam without the permission of the Witch of Midnight, but the boy replied that he had a plan. At this time, in the Lithia Palace, some lady was bathing in the hot baths. The girl is talking to herself about what she knows that lithium has recently taken you made from dairy cows, and bathing in such milk, as far as she knows, promotes breast growth. Lithia interrupted the Midnight Witch's rejoicing and said that it was her. There was no point in bathing here, for something she was very upset and angry about. When the girl asked if Lithia despised her, you said that wasn't the point. According to her, even if she bathed in those waves 10,000 times, nothing would help her, and then she called the Witch of Midnight, the witch board. Then Lithia said she would call a maid after all and let the girl bathe in these baths, but she would have to leave as soon as the procedure was over. The girl gritted her teeth. It happened just as she thought. As soon as Na appeared here, the Lithia immediately hid the heavenly messenger. Then she changed her plan. She decided to just wait for Dani and find out from her where her future husband was hiding. At the same second, on the other side of the planet, the protagonist sneezed and explained that someone must have remembered him. The girl said that Chensi City is inside this barrier, but the field is too powerful and you can't get inside that easily. Then the guy replied that it was no problem and now he would show Sylvia one of his precious treasures. He pulled out an accessory called a ground pass. Its specialty is that it allows you to pass through any obstacle. When the girl saw this artifact she was just shocked and asked where the guy got it, but he only blurted out that it was very cool. In fact, the Earth Goddess gave this artifact to the guy while they were having a secret affair. Then the protagonist jabbed the artifact against the barrier and something happened, and they managed to get into the city of Chancy after all. He went inside with a pathos shouting that the victor of these men had returned, but a shock awaited him. He was simply shocked at what kind of metropolis had grown on this place. It seemed like the magical foundations he had implemented were starting to be used everywhere. He then asked where his statue was. Besides, he noticed that the Witch of Midnight was not as big as that statue. Then he turned around and asked if they were really in the city they wanted and if it was really occupied territory. The next second, some passerby noticed that the protagonist had no clothes and started yelling and calling the guards. The guards ran up and started asking for the bully's ID. This made the protagonist furious, but these documents he did not take, so he had to be captured. But then, suddenly, the girl covered the protagonist with her hand and told him to step back. When the cops saw to have a witch in town, they literally fell over with amazement. And then Sylvia said that her fiancé was standing next to her and did they really want to check his ID? After analyzing the whole situation, the policewoman said that the answer is no, the witch is a precious ID as it is. The guards immediately began licking the witch from all sides, calling her mistress and insisting that the girl visit the restaurants and baths. The guy was shocked. Apparently these people completely lost face and forgot a huge feud between humans and demons, probably because of their plight. And then the girl said that the guards started to annoy her and those obediently saluted and said that they would get out of here right now. They complied. And the guy said he thinks he's starting to realize what's going on at the Occupy territories. The girl said that human hearts were actually occupied, and then once again asked the protagonist to get dressed. For what it was causing problems, the guy agreed, snapped his fingers and a new garment materialized on him. After that, he grabbed Sylvia's hand and started to lead her one place. From such a surprise the girl blushed. She agreed and said that wherever the guy took her, she would always follow him. The pair of protagonists ended up going to a grand library downtown. Already inside it, as the guy walked past the concierge, the librarian asked where their passes were. When the guy heard this, he initially wondered quite a bit why a pass to such and such a place was needed. But he was not confused. Chenxi Jixing put his arm around the girl and said that this was his wife, so no passes were needed for him. When the woman realized that it was indeed a dark elf mistress, she apologized immediately. And she said her eyes were really bad. It turned out that the girl really knows about demons. She read the tome and the real inhabitants of hell as many as 100 times. Then the guy freaks out. The purpose of these books he once collected is to show humanity information about his enemies, not to obey them. Then the guy turned around and walked away with a sullen look, told all whether or not to not listen to those stupid people. When the library was left alone, she was in shock. The girl could not understand in any way who is this man, whom the witch herself marries. After a while, they were already digging through the archives and looking for information. At some point, the girl noticed that Chenxi Jixing looked very gloomy for some reason. Then she suddenly received a question about what the books were for, to which the girl replied that the books were for recording information and teaching people. The guy confirmed her words but added that books are needed not only to store knowledge, but also to change people's thinking. He knows well that the government needs a unified mindset of its people, and with books like this, people's self-awareness has slipped. One of the books, for example, compares a demon child to a human child, but in the end, each chapter simply describes how superior the demon child is to a normal child. This book talks about how people will always be dependent on other people or karma tools and will not be able to solve their problems through force. In general, the hero agrees that humans are weaker than demons, but that's why humanity and must unite. That's why he created this library. All his efforts were for naught, and in the end his people became just that. The girl replied that the Witch of Midnight had been ruling these people for 1,000 years and the thoughts of becoming demons were very firmly planted in their heads. The guy is upset by all this, but he is still determined. Let those people who want this demons and me become, and he will gather the most resilient and strong. He replied to Sylvia, about how people can indeed become demons, but it requires a witch's ability called demonization. When the former goddess heard this, it hit her. It turns out she's back as an elf. Then some other girl's voice said that the perfect thing to do after a bath was to drink some paddle water. The witch hovering over the cities asked Dani how things were going with the errand she had given her. Her interlocutor replied that she had used a tracking device to locate the messenger and now his location had been discovered. Then she said she would send the witch his picture right away, for he was now in the library of one of the captured cities. The girl was very happy about it. She said it was no wonder she had been looking for so long, because her future husband was right in front of my nose. She turned to the image of Chen and said that the guy must have suffered a lot living with the lithium, but now she will set him free. Then she perked up even more and shouted for the guy to wait for her, but now she needs to get the Midnight Witch abilities.